Welcome to the Tax Playbook, your premier tax resource and playbook for all things taxes. I'm Trenda Hackett, CPA. I'm with the Web CPA Virtual Tax Clinic, and my goal here is to give you tips and strategies to help you win in your taxes. As always, I want you to like this video, comment on this video, share this video, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get notified when we are uploading more amazing content weekly. So we're going to get into our topic on today. Here again, this is the Tax Playbook. I'm giving you play-by-play for how to help you win in your taxes. So today we're going to talk about tax credits. And we're going to talk about these two new tax credits that have come out in the new tax law specifically for certain self-employed individuals. That's right, credits for sick leave and family leave for certain self-employed individuals. So what I'm going to cover today is, what is it? First of all, it's a refundable credit, and guess what? It puts money back in your pocket. We'll talk about that later. What's the criteria to receive it? You have been impacted by COVID-19, and like I said, this is for certain self-employed individuals or small businesses. You have to have a net profit from your business in either 2019 or 2020. And number three, what's the maximum amount of money that we're talking about? We're talking about at least not at least, a maximum of $15,000 or more back in your pocket in the form of a tax refund. And number four, how do I get it? I want you to remember this form number. It's an IRS form number that you will need to tell your preparer about, just in case they don't know about it. But ask your CPA or your preparer, or you can visit us at the Web CPA Virtual Tax Clinic at www.virtualtaxclinic.com. You want to ask them about the IRS Form 7202. So the information I'm about to share with you will be centered around filing this Form 7202 with your tax return. And again, you can visit us at the Web CPA Virtual Tax Clinic. Guess what? Y'all have been reaching out to the clinic, and the clinic is at its capacity for accepting clients. But guess what? We will answer your questions. So hit us up on our website at www.virtualtaxclinic.com, and be sure to hit the Get Started button once you get over there. Answer those few questions, and we have a box that you can enter any questions that you have in there. And also you can comment on this video with your questions, and we're watching our YouTube comments, and we will respond to your questions. So let's get into this, into our topic on today. First of all, what is it? So it's a tax credit. You may be wondering, what is a tax credit and how does that help me? I'm so glad you asked. So in a nutshell, a tax credit is a dollar-for-dollar reduction in the amount of taxes that you owe. So that means that you have to work up your taxes, and if you have taxes before applying the credit, and if you have a tax credit, that tax credit could possibly reduce your taxes to zero, or it can just reduce it down for more than what it was. But the credits that we're talking about today, the family and the sick leave credit, it just so happened to be a refundable credit. And if you check on the screen, the difference between a refundable and a non-refundable credit, you can see that on the screen. As with the example, we have just assumed that your tax amount that you owe before the credit is to the tune of $2,500. And let's just say you are entitled to a credit. And on one side you see refundable, on another side you see the impact of the non-refundable. So with a refundable credit, that credit is applied to the amount of tax that you owe. So you owe $2,000. You have a refundable credit of $5,000. And guess what? You get a refund back in your pocket of the $3,000 that is left over. It can also go another way. Let's just say if you didn't owe any taxes. Your taxes before the credit was zero, and now you're entitled to a refundable credit of $5,000. And guess what your refund is? Your refund will be $5,000. Now, If you look over in the same situation with a non-refundable credit, it's pretty straightforward. forward. If you start off owing $2,000 in taxes and you have a non-refundable credit of $5,000, guess what? That credit is only going to go to reduce that $2,000 of taxes that you owe, and you don't get a refund or you don't have tax due, so that's good as well. In another scenario with a non-refundable credit, you can also have it to where you didn't owe any taxes and you have an opportunity for a non-refundable $5,000 credit. Guess what? It's not like the refundable credit. Your tax or your amount due, refund due, will be zero. So that's pretty much how the tax credit works, refundable versus non-refundable. So let me give you a little backdrop on these two credits, the sick leave and the family leave credit. First of all, there have been so many COVID-19 relief bills passed and acts passed, but when COVID first came out, the president signed in the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. And under that act, that was the first act to be released during the pandemic. And in that act, what happened, Congress provided credits to employers who would give their employees sick leave and family leave due to COVID-19 emergencies. And so what that act is saying, that there are certain self-employed people out there, small businesses out there, that while they may not have employees, but what about these people that are unable to work, these small business owners that are unable to work or unable to provide their services due to COVID-19? And so what the bill said, what the law says is that, you know what, they deserve the credit as well. So what this sick and family leave credit for certain self-employed individuals, what it's basically doing is treating the owner of the business as an employee, as if it was an employee, and we're going to see how that credit plays out here in a minute. So I've talked about what is it. It's a refundable tax credit. So let's talk about what is the criteria. What is the criteria that you need to meet in order to receive it? So if you pay attention to the screen, there are several things on the screen. Number one, you have to be a self-employed individual. So what do we mean about that? It says certain self-employed individual. You can be a sole proprietorship, you can be a self-employed individual, you can be an independent contractor, or it is also for a partner in a partnership. So that's the requirement. Number two, if you look on your screen, you must have had net earnings and not a net loss from your business, which is reported on your Schedule C if you are a sole proprietorship or independent contractor or self-employed individual, or if you're a partner in the partnership on your Schedule K1. But what I am saying, that you must have net earnings and not net loss from your business. And guess what? You can either use 2019 or 2020, whichever year has the profit, or you may have had a profit in both years. You can use the larger number, because the more your earnings are, the higher your credit will be. And then number three, you have to have been impacted by COVID. There were days between the dates of April 1st, 2020 through December the 31st, 2020, that you were unable to perform services in your business due to these items that are listed on the screen. It could be that you were unable to work in your business because of the COVID-19 shutdown that was ordered by federal, state, or local government authorities. You could have been impacted if you had to self-quarantine, if you were told to self-quarantine by a health provider and you couldn't provide services. You're impacted. And guess what? Also, you're impacted if you had to care for someone that was had been ordered to self-quarantine. Also, you could be impacted if you had to go to the doctor and you had symptoms in order to get your COVID testing, if you had days that you were unable to work. And also, it also applies to if you had to care for your son or your daughter that was unable to attend school school or daycare due to COVID-19, because the school or the daycare was closed, or because that child had COVID-19 that themselves, and you had to care for that child. So if you pay attention on the screen, this is the criteria in order to be able to possibly position yourself to get an extra $15,000 or more in your pocket. And it could be less depending on the amount of your earnings from your self-employment. So remember those three things, and remember those dates, because you're going to need to know how many days that you were impacted. Now, you say, what is the maximum amount? Here again, if you look on the screen, we have two types of credits, right? You have the sick leave credit and you have the family leave credit. The sick leave credit, you can get it for a maximum of 10 days, to the tune of a maximum amount, of $511 a day, for an overall total maximum amount of $5,110 for that amount of that credit. And remember that the sick leave credit is specifically for you, the business owner, if you had to care for someone, an individual, due to COVID, and you were not able to work, and it's just like you were on a job. If you had to take sick leave, then that applies to you. So on the family leave credit, if you look on the screen, the maximum number of days between that period that I talked about that you were unable to work, April 1st, 2020 through December the 31st, 2020, is the maximum number of days is 50 days. And the maximum amount of the credit, I'm giving you the maximum amount. That's the max. I don't know what the minimum is, because it's all tied to how much your profit or your net earnings is from your business. So that credit, the family leave credit, is a $200 a day, a maximum of 50 days. So that means the maximum credit amount is $10,000. So I want you to be aware of a particular stipulation with this credit. The family leave portion of this credit is only for if you had to care for your son or your daughter who is under the age of 18, or there's no age limit if this son or your daughter has a mental or a physical disability, or if they're disabled. So just remember that the family leave credit is specifically for you, for the care of your son or your daughter who was unable to attend school or their daycare because it was closed due to COVID. And here again, that son or daughter has to be under the age of 18. There's no age limit if this is your son or daughter and that child has a mental or a physical disability. Another thing I want to caution you about, I talked about having to have a net earnings or net profit from your business from 2019 to 2020. You may want to know, well, where do I find that? Get your 2019 or your 2020 tax return. Locate the IRS form, Schedule SE. IRS Form 1040, Schedule SE, line 6. It is going to show the amount of your net earnings or your net profit from your business that you would have to have in order to calculate the proper amount of the credit, the refundable credit that you're entitled to. Now, lastly, how do you get it? This is where the strategy comes in. First of all, the credit is calculated using IRS Form 7202. Now, I know you're not doing your tax return. I hope many of you are not doing your tax returns by hand. But if you're doing your tax return, you have somebody doing your tax return, or you're doing it through a tax software, you want to find that Form 7202. It's going to ask you for this information. It's going to ask you for the number of days. It's going to ask you for the amount of your net earnings. I've told you where to get that information. But most of all, get with your tax preparer or your CPA or whomever is preparing your tax return and ask them. Ask them about the Form 7202. Tell them you saw this amazing video on YouTube and you heard that you could possibly be in the position to get $15,000 or more in the form of a refundable tax credit That means a refund back to you in the form of your taxes on your tax return, and that she told you that you can do that on the form IRS Form 7202. So that's all I have for you on today. I hope this information will help you to win in your taxes, and most of all to keep dollars in your pocket. Likewise, as always, if you have any questions, comment on this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel, because I will be uploading more and more amazing content as things are changing, and I want you to be in the know. So you go out and you have a lovely, lovely, and an amazing day.